500 billion tons. That's the amount of resources consumed globally over the past 6 years between COP21 in Paris in 2015 and COP26 in Glasgow. Sustainable practices are going to win the battle for the consumer's wallet in the future. Green is definitely the new black. Vicky Van Hoosen, a pioneering Californian-based businesswoman, developed a biodegradable material that looks and feels like leather, but it is made from recycled plastic. Other players in the fashion industry too are innovating their business models. Uniqlo and Levi's have created new manufacturing processes which reduce the water consumed to make a single pair of distressed jeans by 99%. The H&M store in Stockholm is recycling old clothes. Customers can bring in old t-shirt or cotton dress and watch it being rewoven into a sweater or scarf through the glass walls of the machine. I'm overwhelmed to welcome our panelists for the next session. Sustainable Education, a roadmap to circular economy. The erudite speakers on the panel are Dr. Jan Owen, Chairperson, Cool Australia; Dr. Ravi Chopra, former Director of People's Science Institute; Dr. Anthony Hallag, Leader for Research Group in Industrial Ecology and Circular Economy and Faculty of Science, School of Earth and Environmental Sciences, Faculty of Science, the University of Queensland, Australia. I extend a hearty welcome to the moderators of the session who would take the discussion forward. Ms. Lata Vaidyanathan, Director, Gyan Bharti School; Ms. Malini Narayanan, former Chairperson, NPSC and Principal, Army Public School, Shankar Vihar; Mr. Sanjay Yadav, Executive Member, NPSC and Principal, Alcon International School, Mayur Vihar, has kindly consented to be the coordinator of the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ritu, for that wonderful introduction. A very warm welcome and a good afternoon, and welcome to another invigorating session. The morning has been spectacular, and I hope the afternoon also carries on the same pace and the momentum. So this session is titled Sustainable Education, a Roadmap to Circular Economy. And we have a very interesting panel of eminent speakers lined up who worked in diverse domains of sustainable practices. So we have Dr. Jan Owen from Cool, Australia; Dr. Ravi Chopra, the former Director of People's Science Institute; Dr. Anthony Hallag, who works in the field of industrial ecology and is in the faculty of University of Queensland, Australia. Dr. Hallag, we are so grateful. There's been a major disaster in Australia and you've been impacted by it, but we are so happy to have you. And that just shows the passion that you have for this theme that we have chosen. So grateful to you, sir, for being here. And what a privilege to have all of you with us this morning. So it's going to be ladies first, as usual. And Dr. Jan, education system must create lifelong learners and create a love for learning has been the adage we've heard so often. And you've been a powerful advocate and a believer that education must empower the youth and shape the world by equipping them with both agency as well as competency. And many of your articles have always dealt with this. Being a social entrepreneur, looking at sustainability from a social perspective, you've always dealt in the cusp of being in this space. So with your vast experience of working with education systems and in organizations with deal with youth, and you've headed so many of them, we ask you to share some of those educational models which actually makes this adage successful and an actionable goal. So request you to kindly share your thoughts on this theme and, of course, the way forward, since we are talking about it to be a roadmap. Over to you, Dr. Jan. I'll request the host to permit Dr. Jan to share her screen, please.
thank you very much for that very warm welcome. And it's wonderful, truly wonderful to see wonderful friends from India. I feel like COVID has kept us separate for a very long time, way too long actually. And so it would have been amazing if we could be together, but this is as close as we're going to get for a little while, I think. And I want you to know, and thank you for your thoughts about Australia. Where Anthony is where I grew up in Queensland. So I have a lot of friends and family struggling in floods, but we also know that in India, at many different times, you have also had your struggles. So our thanks go to you for thinking of us right now. Ms. Lena, as you said, I have had a lot of different roles in education, and right now I'm co-convener of a large organisation called Learning Creates Australia, a very bold and ambitious plan to transform education and put students at the centre of their learning. But today I wanted to talk to you about one of the other things that I do, which is as chair of Cool Australia. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I feel the work, and I'm relatively new to this work, but I feel that the work that Cool Australia has been doing is of real interest in education sustainability. So just to give you, I think, the background, and I just want to underline, I just heard your students talking and I thought it was, all the things they said were so poignant and correct. But I think just us being so clear about what it is that's happening and what our young people are inheriting, and we see it right now every day and in so many ways, these global challenges of inequality, of climate, and of course geopolitical instability around the world. I really like this quote from H.G. Wells. Who would have known that H.G. Wells was one of our greatest thinkers about education, but this idea that civilization is a race between education and catastrophe, and there's no more important time right now. And I want to commend every single educator that's in the room or watching this or going to watch this conference to thank you for your work and your dedication, and to remind you and to assure you that there's probably been no more important time on the planet today than to be an educator. An educator today is the most important role that you could have in society. So I commend and thank you for that. In this organisation called Cool Australia, or cool.org, we have this very strong purpose to help teachers and parents become the best educators they can be, so that we can have young people that do grow up happy and healthy and informed and ready to tackle our challenges and create a better world. And when we went looking for research, we discovered that actually 90% of teachers say they do not have enough time to prepare effectively, and 80% of teachers, as a result, scramble at the last minute or weekend or a few hours or weeks ahead of a term by just going on Google to try and find resources. And we just felt that that was not good enough. It wasn't good enough for our educators, who are so well trained and so dedicated, and it wasn't necessarily good enough for our students. So what we did was bridge the gap. And one of the primary and most important focuses of the work is having students think and act and engage in sustainability education, thinking about sustainability. And by doing that, our education specialists have designed thousands and thousands and thousands of courses that help students think about sustainability, but not just sit and learn about it, but go and do something about it, to act on it, and use inquiry-based learning to find out. And as we know, that those issues that I spoke about kind of instability and climate change, for a large number of students, that often makes them feel paralysed and full of fear. And I think the work that we need to do as students, so importantly, is to help them get beyond that fear and beyond that paralysis, to act and to do something, even something small, just one thing, just do one thing. All our work is aligned to the Sustainability Development Goals, and we can start to see how easy it is to create a curriculum and to build out things that are meaningful to young people, that are things that they're experiencing in their world. One of the fantastic things that we also do is we partner. And a couple of years ago, there was a brilliant, brilliant film called 2040 made by this man called Damon Gatto. This film ended up at Sundance and at the Cannes Film Festival and films all over the world. And it was a special movie because what it did was talk about what is possible, what people are doing. And it was full of hope for what we might yet create in the world, not kind of the doom and gloom. And he wrote this film for his 4-year-old daughter. And it is a love project, really, to children around the world to show them early things that people are doing and changes that people are making so that they could be inspired themselves. As a result, we've seen this real incredible area of work that I'm passionate about, which is sort of student agency, student purpose, but also mastery, this ability to dig deep and to learn new things. And when we see this happen with students and we see students owning their own learning, we see them their agency increasing. We see their purpose and their mindsets expanding. We see them taking risks and learning and experimenting. And we see this kind of growing mastery and their interest peaks in things that are of great interest to them. And so this is what we're looking for. And I think this is what we're trying to measure across all transformation in education and learning and all the work that we're doing is how can we increase student agency? How can we increase this sense of purpose and meaning? And how can we increase their mastery and that journey of mastery, which of course lasts a lifetime. The impact of this work has been really profound in quite a short few years. 52% of teachers in Australia use these resources. 3.6 million students have been reached. But more importantly, or as importantly to one of those things that I spoke about earlier, 9 million hours of preparation time has been saved because educators have a place where they can go and find information on sustainability education, all packaged and ready to use. And from the student side, we've seen incredible results. We've seen a 98% increase in awareness and knowledge about sustainability issues, 97% increase in changed outlook and attitude about issues. So that from that fear and paralysis to a 93% increase in preparedness to act and to do something. And then again, a 96% improvement in critical thinking skills, which we know are one of the set of 5 or 6 absolutely essential skills and capabilities that young people are going to need as we move through the 21st century. I thought I would end just with a story that I think kind of wraps all this up and talks about this in the real world. This young woman, whose name is Rajani Gibson, is from the Bundjalung tribe, which is one of our First Nations tribes in New South Wales in Australia. I'm sitting and coming to you today from the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung lands of the Kulin Nations. And we pay our respects in all our work to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and elders emerging past and present. And Rajani was asked to be involved in a project at school that was around mapping the ecology of her area, of this area that the Bundjalung tribe for millennia have taken care of, which is a beautiful part of Australia where the ocean meets the forest and a beautiful coastline. And Rajani was asked to take part in a project that would help researchers from CSIRO, which is our major scientific institute in Canberra, Australia, to start to look beyond where the eye can see and use technology to find what was going on in the oceans and the currents and the climate change. So Rajani went to the elders in her tribe and asked for their permission and said, what do you think about us using this new technology? And the elders said, of course, that sounds wonderful, you should do that. And so Rajani, in the course of her school program, was trained to be one of the very first drone rangers in Australia and the very first young Indigenous drone ranger in Australia, possibly the world. She went on then to train up 8 other young people, as young Indigenous people, as these drone rangers. And they were collecting data and analysing it and sending it back to our institute in Canberra. The most beautiful blend of, and what Rajani describes as, this is important to me because this is my country and my people, and we have looked after this land for millennia, but the opportunity to engage in new technologies that help us build sustainability in this coastline and look beyond where the eye can see and put us in the driver's seat of that work as young people has had a powerful impact on my life. And so we see this joining of these ideas of technology and sustainability and young people getting this mastery and these new skills to help us all. I'm very much a follower of the art of living and Sri Sri Ravishankar, and I love his quote about only human values orientated approach in education can impart true intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. And it's so revealing and it's so connecting that you finished with the quote of Sri Sri Ravishankar, the art of living that brings all of us together. It's a huge moment. And thank you for that beautiful, insightful presentation. And talking about how contextualizing education and bringing the children who belong to the region back to their roots and connecting them with the modern. I think that's a huge step. And that is the only way forward, because that helps them connect with the real-time problems or develops the understanding of their immediate environment. I think that's a fantastic move, and that's the way to go forward, I'm sure. So we'll get back to you again with a lot of questions. You've shared the beautiful resource with us, which I'm sure all the teachers and the educators who are watching the show today are going to quickly go and reach out to see how they can access it. And the initial inertia that comes in to how do I get this done is going to break the moment they use those resources. So thank you so much for sharing it. So, and we'll get back to you again with a few questions. Dr. Ravi Chopra, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You're known for your path-breaking work in water resource management and, of course, disaster mitigation and response. But so you're deeply respected for your passionate stance that you take on issues of ecology, and especially the controversial ones. And to know that you actually resigned from a Supreme Court body on a mega project called the Char Dham Project Highway, just to emphasize the fact that ecology means to you more than any other damaging development. I think that kind of brings in all the respect, and the country really bows to you for that. So, Dr. Ravi Chopra, my little share of thought with you is, do share with us what is it that we can do to awaken and jostle the collective consciousness of our youth to create and embed an entire curriculum inside our classrooms, so that we create a generation of Ravi Chopras. We just don't have one. We have many, many more of you. What do we need to do to bring that about in our everyday curriculum and teaching in the classroom? So over to you, Dr. Chopra, and please do unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for that extremely generous introduction. I hope you will excuse my age. I tend to be very forgetful now. So much of what I'm going to say, I'm going to have to read out from my notes. Please excuse that. I'm basically an experimentalist. And therefore, what I'm going to try and do today is to give some ideas of what I think are the critical elements in the roadmap of a circular economy, and then try and guide, leave some pointers for what the students can do in order to absorb those points. Okay. Now, the circular economy, as you know, has been proposed as an alternative to production and consumption patterns so that we can minimize the challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, waste, and pollution in the world. These ideas are also discussed in an old book, The Economy of Permanence by J.C. Kumarappa, the noted Gandhian economist. He published the book in the 1940s. And though the book is difficult to read, but the ideas are very interesting in there. So some of your teachers may be interested in taking a look at it. Now, this circular economy concept is based on 3 principles: recycle, reuse products to eliminate waste and pollution, and then to regenerate nature. After reading the literature on circular economy, I find that much of this literature comes from the West, in the developed nations. And it focuses much more on the reuse and recycling of industrial manufactured goods and the waste products. Given my own background, I would like to focus more on the aspect of the principle of regenerating nature. And here there are 4 critical elements. The first one, the most important, is to enhance forest and tree cover. Now, most of us are aware of the need to reduce the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and its ill effects. The afforestation, where there were no trees earlier, and reforestation, which is regenerating depleted forest areas, are simple ways to reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And at the same time, they also deliver very rich downstream benefits. To name some of them, the forests curb soil erosion, they sequester organic carbon, they recharge groundwater, sustain base flows to rivers, they prevent desertification, and etc., etc. Now, by planting trees, we ensure human well-being. The resources of the forest create huge employment opportunities, especially when there is less use of machinery for processing. Greater reliance on human labor also reduces the demand for commercial power and therefore pollution. And worldwide, it is estimated that afforestation can be done on about 9 million square meters, increasing the existing forest area by about 25%. Reforestation is required on a huge scale also. On an annual basis, we are deforesting 60,000 square kilometers every year in the world. Now, 60,000 square kilometers is a little larger than the state that I live in, which is the state of Uttarakhand. And what can students do about this? One of the interesting things is that there is a need to have urban forests. Now in Delhi, you have South Delhi, if I remember right from my younger days, you have that area of Jahanpana, the Jahanpana forest. Then there was Haus Khas. A lot of forested areas existed, which have over the years been done away. Now, many parks can still be regenerated in Delhi. I often visit friends in Sundarnagar, and there is a small patch in Sundarnagar, which is more like a wooded area rather than the typical quadrangle type of park with a few trees and shrubs at the boundary. Students could possibly begin to find out the different species of trees that exist in Delhi, their ability to absorb carbon dioxide, and the other downstream benefits that can flow from these trees. Okay. Just compiling an anthology of the trees of Delhi, the ones that existed, let's say 25 years ago. I remember the jamun trees all along the Lutyens Delhi area, which are now no more. These jamun trees are all gone. So that would be a very interesting aspect. And secondly, to ensure an effort that was done in the 1980s by students of Delhi, which was the protection of the ridge area of Delhi. Okay. Now that is an effort that needs to be continued because there are a lot of pressures that that are trying to cut back on the ridge area. The second element is enhancing groundwater, river flows, and increasing food production. You may probably be aware that India is the largest user of groundwater in the world. And a recent study by scientists at IIT Kharagpur reveals that there is severe groundwater depletion in the Indo-Gangetic plains. Reduced groundwater leads to lower base flows into streams and rivers. And there has been a 60% reduction in the base flows of the Ganga between 1970s and the last decade. This is hurting river ecology, food production, domestic water supply, and livelihoods of fishing communities. The problem of low flows in the rivers of India, particularly the Ganga basin, is very critical. And it is accompanied, on top of that, it is accompanied by the problem of pollution, which we are all aware of. Very few of us are aware of the problem of low flows. And that is far more critical. If there's no water flowing in a river, there is no river. Okay. And this is the tragedy of large cities like Delhi and Kanpur and Mumbai. We have converted our local rivers into drains. Not too long ago, Delhi had 17 small streams and rivers emerging from the Aravalli ridge, flowing into the Yamuna. The largest of them, if I'm not mistaken, was the Sabiki, which has now become the Najafgarh Nala. Not too long ago, in the 1980s, when I lived in Delhi, there was a small stream in Defense Colony, and that goes under Barapula and joins the Yamuna River. But what is the state of all of these streams? These streams are nothing but sewage drains today. And so we really need to look at it. It might be very interesting for the students to look back in the not more than the last century to see the water flows in Delhi city, in Bombay, in Kanpur, in Varanasi, all these towns and cities. There are any number of examples of live streams with fish in it that have become drains today. And what can we do about them? For example, those of us who live in gated communities, well, why can't we have a decentralized wastewater treatment system in the gated community? In my own house, I have a rainwater harvesting tank under my lawn. I call it my local hanging garden. Okay. Now, you can put these systems, whether it's a harvesting system or a wastewater treatment system, they can go under the ground. Okay. So there's no shortage of space. You have parks in the quadrangles, please put them over there. So this is something that students can begin to look at there is, even the schools can do it. Some time ago, we were approached by the Welham Boys School to try and do wastewater treatment from their hostel. Unfortunately, the principal changed and the idea went with him. The third is nature-based farming. Now, many of you are aware that we are using a lot of water for irrigation. Almost 80% of the water that is consumed in India is for irrigation. And along with that water, we are using all kinds of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that are carcinogenic. We need to move towards nature-based farming. System of crop intensification has been adopted by millions of farmers all over the world, including a few million in India, to cultivate paddy, wheat, sorghum, millets, vegetables, and all kinds of things with less water, higher productivity, almost no chemical fertilizers, and no pesticides. Okay, so the profits for the farmers are higher in this case because their inputs are lower. The fourth element, along with this, is a nutritious diet. Now, at the time of independence, the average Indian diet contained 50% coarse grains. These are millets like bajra and ragi, sorghum or jawar, and maize. Coarse grains are more nutritious. They require less water to grow. They are hardier crops. They can withstand droughts and floods. There is no stubble to be burnt. And by emphasizing the nutritional value of coarse grains, there is a good chance that people can be encouraged to make them a greater part of the daily diet. Now, here's a small survey that almost every student can do in his or her home, which is to ask a grandparent, what was the kind of food that you ate? What was, the thali, what did your thali look like? And when the class sits down and collects it and analyzes it, then you begin to understand. This needs to be followed up with a small idea about the nutritional value of the different foods that we are eating today. And we need to compare it with what the children are eating. How much of it is processed food? How much of it is garbage at McDonald's? Okay. And finally, there is the issue of air quality. Now, this is something that fortunately most nations have woken up to. Motor vehicle emissions are the major culprit of ambient air pollution. It may come as a surprise, certainly came to me, that India is the 5th largest producer of automobiles and the largest producer in the world of two-wheelers. We are producing something like 20 million two-wheelers. Automobiles are all sold inside the country. A significant portion of the two-wheelers are exported outside the country. And the high density of motor vehicles, slow-moving stop-and-go traffic in Indian cities exacerbates the pollution problem. The recent push for electric vehicles is an important step in curbing this. And secondly, the focus on rapid mass transport is sorely needed in many Indian cities. Now, what do the students do? The students have to try and figure out, not just related to motor vehicles, but really each one of us can do an energy audit in our homes. How much energy are we consuming in a day? How much energy are we consuming in a week? Because there are certain activities you don't do every day. How much energy we consume in a month, and how much do we consume in a year? Now, for example, your vacation comes once or twice in a year. It doesn't come every day. So certain activities occur at certain times. And then once this audit is done, we begin to see, where can I cut back? Where can my family cut back? And how can we reduce our energy consumption? So these kinds of surveys, I have personally found that when people do these surveys, particularly children, they begin to understand, by analyzing the data, they begin to understand what can be changed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm writing out those projects that we would actually be doing. We've touched a number 100 with this little conversation that we've had with you, and such brilliant ideas. And you've touched all the elements, be it earth, water, air, everything. And I must also tell you, and you would be happy to know, that all the NPSC schools have a rain harvesting system in the school.
Very good.
Most of us are solar enabled. So that's another proud moment for, us to share. That's important news that we wanted to share. We have an eco club, which connects with the Delhi forest system. So we have a team called the Eco Warriors. Each one actually wears a beautiful badge saying, I'm an eco warrior, and I'm proud to be a part of this energy saving drive. We also have an energy audit system. I think the ideas that you gave us really are path-breaking, and I'm sure we'll consolidate all of them and put them into practice. So that's been an amazing conversation we've had with you, and I think you've really curated this little talk for schools and school principals. Our teachers are going to be very, very upset because of the number of projects that now we are going to share with them and make them work hard on. So thank you. We'll get back to you again. And Professor Hallock, thank you so much. And we can't thank you enough that you made time to be here. So let me welcome our dear senior, Lata Vedyanathan ma'am, who's been a mentor for all of us. Lata ma'am, let me invite you to take the conversation forward, please. Lata ma'am, you need to unmute yourself. Please do unmute yourself.
Thank you, Malini. It's been wonderful listening to both the speakers before Dr. Hallock. And I have to, first of all, say that the East Coast of Australia feels the worst floods, I think, in living memory. And this week of torrential rain, probably, which has been called as a rain bomb, and how people are dealing with it is really remarkable. I mean, on that note, I need to record appreciation for Dr. Anthony Hallock, who since till today morning and in apt preparation for the same, that he may get disengaged from this conversation. He has sent us a very beautiful presentation with only one limitation, that the presentation, once it starts, will run into a lot of time. And therefore, can I request Dr. Sudha Acharya to make sure that the presentation reaches all. I saw it, and the kind of purpose it serves is not funny. So it is very educative. It's a whole session in itself. And the kind of expertise he brings is baffling, to say the least. He works on circular economy, on green economy, on biomimicry, sustainable bioeconomics, industrial ecology, cleaner transition to sustainability and production, systems modeling, analysis, and name it, and you have it. While going through the details of his work, one realized that he's really, really very keen on what probably Dr. Ravi Chopra talked about a little earlier, the climate resilient and circular economy. He breaks it down into such fantastic modes. He calls them, puts them in 3 parts and says, if we take care of this, I think probably we have taken care of everything. Energy and agro-food security, socio-economic security, environment and resource security. I think this calls for a lot of understanding on skill. Over to you, Dr. Anthony Hallock. We are very keenly awaiting and wanting to listen to what more we can carry away from this absolutely beautiful session on sustainable education.
All right. Firstly, namaste to everyone there in
Namaste.
India.
Namaste.
I'm also a practitioner of art of living like John. And thank you also for the ideas put forward by John and Ravi with regard to this session on sustainability education. So let me share my screen with you because of the time constraint. Okay, so firstly, I would like to say thank you for the organizers of this National Progressive School Conference. And under the session on sustainable education, a roadmap to circular economy, I thought that I should give a short talk on educating the young minds for a climate resilient circular economy, and considering that we have experienced flooding here in Brisbane. So way back in 2016, I was invited by Xavier School of Management at Jamshedpur in India, actually, to give a plenary talk on circular economy and its relevance to electronic waste. And this was featured in the Economic Times in India. So what I would like to pose to the educators there in India, as well as in any part of the world, is what really the systemic problems are we trying to solve? Firstly, we need to take into consideration the energy and the agri-food security issues. So we should have enough food and energy actually to sustain our economy. Secondly, we need to take into consideration socioeconomic security, and at a national level, we need to address poverty alleviation, social equity, and inclusive education. And at a personal level, we need to enhance our individual income. But to support these two security issues, we need to respect Mother Earth. We need to operate within the ecological carrying capacity of the Mother Earth. And what I would like to challenge the teachers and educators in the future is to ask the question, what innovative learning opportunities and skills that we need to develop and implement actually, so that we can actually support that transition to what we call resource efficient, low carbon, circular economy. So if we look at a global scale on the interconnectedness between the human system and the natural system, and given the current society's linear economic system that take, the make, the use, and the dispose system, where we extract the resources from the Mother Earth, we use it, and then we dispose those used products as well as the emissions and waste back to the Mother Earth, which affects the ecosystem quality, our health. Maybe that's why maybe we have COVID, and it also affects the resource provision. So in line with circular economy, and particularly with waste management minimization, there is now an increasing interest on shifting towards circular economy, particularly starting with the 3R principle of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Although this has already been extended to redesign, reimagine, remanufacturing, and a lot of R's already have been taken into account. So UNEP has further asserted that we cannot really follow the Western pattern of consumption, whether we are talking Australian way of life or American way of life, because we are just, if we allow the Indians and other people in developing countries, we would just not increasing the man-made disasters actually in the environment, and we don't want that to happen. So if we look into what we call the ecological footprint indicator, which actually measures how fast we humans actually generate waste and consume resources compared to the Mother Earth, and if we follow the American way of living, actually, it requires 5 Earths. If we follow the Australian 4 Earths, China 2/3, and it's good. India is still like 70% of the ecological carrying capacity. But on the average, we have already exceeded actually the ecological capacity of the Mother Earth. So maybe that's the reason why we are exploring Mars, because we have already exceeded the capacity of our Mother Nature. So if we look on the global energy consumption, actually, here in the developed countries in North America, in Europe, in Russia, in Australia, the energy consumption ranges from 25,000 kilowatt to 100,000 kilowatt. And if we zoom into the case of India, which is here, that could range between 5,000 to 10,000 kilowatt hour per person. So as we know, when we burn non-renewable fossil fuels, there is a corresponding release of carbon dioxide at the troposphere. So the higher the amount of greenhouse gases in the troposphere, that also results to global temperature rising. And as a result of that, we have this global warming and the changing climate, which results to typhoons, storms, bushfires, forest fires. So there are a lot of issues that are impacting our nature. So if we zoom into the case of India in particularly identifying what are those sectors that contributing the most. And it shows that it's the electricity in the heat sector is contributing. And that is really from the non-renewable fossil fuels, the coal, the natural gas, the petroleum, the gasoline, the diesel that they are consuming. And the same with the agriculture, maybe that could be the accumulated biomass waste, which produce methane emissions. And also the NOx coming from the transportation sector, as well as from the manufacturing sector. So those are the key sectors that we need to target. And therefore, those engineers, scientists that are going to this sector should have some sort of like a training, a skill development specifically to relevance to sustainable development and circular economy. In addition, if we look on the waste generation globally, and if we zoom into the case of South Asia, where India is located, there is a doubling of the waste by 2050, relative to 2016, right? But it looks like it's the same across the region. And if we would like to know where are those wastes coming from, and most of these wastes are organic waste, the food and green, the paper and cardboard are contributing the most. And where are they going? Most of them are going to an open dump system or a landfill, which is contrary to the agenda of circular economy. And as you can see here, is only 13.5 is being recycled, where in fact, we need to do better than that actually. So we have to reduce this open dump as well as the landfill. So it's really a big challenge for all of us, not only the scientists, the engineers, but hopefully we can operationalize this. So in the field of industrial ecology, actually, where we have this master equation. So the environmental emission is directly proportional to the population. So the higher the population, the more emissions. The higher the gross domestic product, more emissions, but depending on the availability of technology, whether it's obsolete or the best available one, that also affects the environmental emission in a particular region or in a particular country. So we really need to shift from what we call linear economic system, because as we all know, the main driving force in the linear economic system, which is the widely prevalent, is profitability and maybe greed in particular, actually. So we are arguing in industrial ecology that the human social system is just a small subset of the natural system. So we strongly argue for that, what we call strong sustainability model. And our Mother Earth is requesting us, please don't destroy me, because I will give you shelter, food, water, and oxygen, right? So again, I think Jan has shown this United Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, but in particular with relevance to circular economy is the goal 12, actually. And it is important for us to operationalize this target. It's not only at the country level, but also at the grassroots level. And it's good that the schools there in India and any other schools in Europe actually are trying to operationalize and include some relevant skill development principles and values to be incorporated in course and curriculum development. So by 2030, as you can see here, we need to reduce the waste by prevention, reduction, and recycling and reuse. And that is also with relevance to goal 4, which is with relevance to inclusive education. Moreover, this is the reason why we need to shift. Now, we need to shift from what we call linear economic system, which is the take, the make, and the dispose, to what we call the circular economic system. As what Ravi has mentioned, it's really looking on waste-free or less-free economic system. And there are 3 main principles. One is you design out waste and the pollution, so particularly at the design phase. So it would be good if we can teach our students or incorporate, if we are offering a subject on design and engineering, or in problem solving, on creativity, if we can incorporate that, this would be a good, excellent avenue to do that. Keep products and materials in use as often as possible. And lastly is to regenerate natural systems. So we can encourage students to be involved in composting projects, or maybe encourage different regions in India to be involved in composting, because as what Ravi has mentioned, it is important to regenerate natural system. So the question that remains to my mind is how we educators, teachers, principals, school administrators can incorporate this values, attitudes with relevance to sustainability and circular economy. And there are many ways, there are a lot of opportunities, like what John has mentioned. There are already a lot of developments, partly here in Australia, but a lot of particularly incorporating circularity happening in Europe, particularly in Finland and Scandinavian countries. But I think as an educator, we need to think about how can we incorporate these 3 core principles of circular economy. But today, I'll just want to introduce how we can play with our students actually, because I thought that that is the best way actually, such that we can involve students. So I'm gonna introduce what we call the Eco-CEO. And the purpose of this is to develop the knowledge, the skills, and the mindset actually, so that we can shape our students to become more aware, I would say, so that we can create what we call a sustainable society. And is a table board game. And I think most of the students or children are familiar with it. And it has to be fun. It has to be engaging educational materials. And if the students are more research oriented, then that would encourage independent research, experimentation. And one skill that is very relevant right now is cross-disciplinary, inter-transdisciplinary is very important. And we can apply the knowledge, the methods, the notions from geography, science, chemistry, mathematics, engineering, we can bring them together. But because we have limited time, there are a lot of materials here, but I will show you how this game works, even just for a short. This is just a 3-minute video, and hopefully you will appreciate and incorporate this in your maybe in your course development.
All teams take clockwise turns. On each turn, you can perform 3 types of activities. Make an investment, use your employees to perform actions, sell any products you've produced on the market. Before starting to play, let's have a look at the cards. Each card has 2 main functions. Your first option is to use it as raw material. There are 3 different resource types: yellow, purple, and red. Your second option is to use the card to make an investment. This action costs you money, but you gain victory points and improve your company's performance. Now, it's time to play. You have already 2 investments available at the start of the game. If you assign an employee to mining, you can draw 2 resource cards from the deck. If you have the necessary resources in your hand, you can assign a worker to your microchip factory to produce a chip. To symbolize the product, you put 1 resource card face down on the factory. The other 2 cards go into the waste depot. At the end of your turn, you can sell your products and receive money from the bank. Prices are indicated on the company board. You can also store your products for later. It's up to you. There's a hand limit of 7 cards. Put the surplus in the waste depot at the end of your turn. You can assign both employees to the same activity to perform it twice. Once your employees have executed their actions, you retrieve them. The game goes on and the next player takes his turn. Every time your turn starts, you can make 1 investment to expand your company with new activities. You can invest in a factory for phones or e-bikes. These products will get you a higher revenue. Don't forget to pay for the investment. You can use the investment right away by assigning an employee. Upgrade investments have a coloured ribbon and make an improvement to existing activities of the same colour. Resource efficiency allows you to produce goods with 1 less resource. Resource substitution lets you exchange 1 resource for another. Each investment grants you a victory point. If you manage to make all investments indicated on your board, you receive the award for efficient production processes, which is worth 3 victory points. Check the manual if anything's unclear. The action card reminds you of the actions that you can perform during your turn. If you get stuck at some point, you can always trade resource cards and credits with other players during your turn. What are you waiting for? Good luck with building your company, but watch out for events. Events happen straight away and affect all teams. When you reach the next mega event, it's time to move on to the second stage of the game. But we'll come to that later. Let's start playing now.
So, okay, hopefully that gives you an idea on how can you play this game, or maybe you can develop a game there adapted to the Indian context. Actually, I think that would be a good idea. Maybe you can involve some scientists in IIT actually to develop an app. And I think there are a lot of materials here that hopefully we don't have much time. So I'm gonna proceed. Besides that game, actually, I would like to strongly encourage principals and school administrators to organize activities as well as define some indicators for circular economy. Maybe you can create some booklets and action sheets on the circular economy. You can also quantify the number of children reached by teaching circular economy activities. You can mainstream education for sustainable and incorporate that in curriculum development, in teacher training, and in regional educational policies. And really the aim of this is to integrate the principles, values, and practices of sustainable development and circular economy into all aspects of education and learning, starting maybe from the primary, secondary, at the university level. And at UQ, we have these courses where we incorporate sustainable development and circular economy, particularly environmental science and environmental management. And at postgraduate level, we have Master of Environmental Management and Sustainable Energy. I think that's all for me, actually. This is me, actually. I'm working at UQ, and I've been teaching these courses for the past 10 years, industrial ecology and life cycle. And if you're interested in some of the latest publication in circular economy, particularly maybe the second one, a review of circular economy in develop and how you may adopt this in developing countries, particularly in India. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Oh. Lata ma'am?
Yes. I'm almost dumbfounded. Thank you so much. Each one of you have been so extraordinary. And the takeaways, I'm sure, for everyone who's listening in are so many. It's not just the takeaways. There's work ahead in schools. And I think there are some questions which come about in our minds. And I must say that Dr. Ravi Chopra and Dr. Anthony Hellock not only asked the questions on our behalf and answered them, but in the interest of time, I just want to say that, here, I think there's a roadmap to the vision of development that is based on mindful and deliberate utilization and not mindless and destructive consumption. So that, I think there's a movement on from all that we heard for a Plo Planet People movement ahead, which can be only driven by student engagement and student participation in schools. But there's something very interesting that came to my mind as I was listening to this. And I know that there isn't too much time for questions given the nature of the time here. But I have just, and both Dr. Ravi Chopra and Dr. Anthony Hellock have given us the questions and answers for some things that schools can actively engage in and do. So I think in sustainability and circular economy and all of that we've been talking about all this time is not just about reducing or reusing, but it also takes us to the next dimension, which is sustainability of the way we think, the way we act, and the way we do. So it was interesting to watch. And my request to Jan Owen, just one short question to her, is how do we sow these seeds of social innovation as a culture in education and schools? I'm saying this particularly because it was very interesting that in her own life, she talks about how she was not a very good student. And I think she's one of the most powerful mentors I can see even to myself as I make this statement, and how she loved selling lemonade. If that is a secret, I might divulge. And the first two buyers were essentially her father and her family, and how that caught on. But even more interesting is her observation on young people, which I think all of us do recognize. And that is that they are interested. It's not something that we can give young people. She says that they are interested in fairness, equality, sustainability of the planet, and they're hyper-connected, unlike us when we began 40, 50 years back. She said, and she also says, if there is a problem that you're trying to solve, and you have not lived a part of it, it's not your experience, go collaborate and find out. I think that is critical, because we can't be armchair solution finders or watch out of the window and think things can happen. Lastly, there's something she says beautifully. She says, find people with scars who can share their journey and stories and prepare to advise. I'm quoting this and requesting Dr. Jan Owen to just give us a very small insight into how do we sow these seeds of social innovation as a culture in schools. Because I think once a thinking quality is right, the rest of what needs to be done with sustainability for the world will certainly be impacted. Dr. Jano.
I'm very embarrassed about all the stories you have about me, Lata. Where did you get this?
When we have three amazing people on our screens that we can only see but not touch, then we have to reach out and touch them to know that we actually know you a little more.
That's good, yeah. That you're a real person, Jan.
I think the person having the real life right now is you, Anthony. So I'm feeling for you in Queensland very, very much. Listen, I think I always used to think that, it's just about, the young people, and the young people will save us and everything will be okay, and make sure they've got the skills and the tools and so on. But then, of course, now I've spent so much time in education and learning. I honestly believe that this is a shared school community approach. So unless parents and unless educators and students come together and we genuinely have communities around this work, it's not going to be enough just to give young people the tools. Of course, they will do remarkable things, and they do. I mean, I'm surrounded by them all the time. They are remarkable innovators, and they absolutely sometimes say, everyone get out of the way. I have an idea and I want to make it happen. But in day-to-day reality, the things that Dr. Ravi and the things that Dr. Heller talked about are things that are going to take all of us. And so our single greatest challenge in this decade is going to be how we work together. That is going to be the single greatest challenge. How will we make sure everyone is part of the solution? And that means educators, from my perspective, need to be given a lot of opportunity to learn, to upskill, to reskill, to grow, to open up their minds to whole new ways of working, and actually sometimes to let students teach. And I've always said, if you're over 40 and you don't have a mentor under 30, it's going to be hard for you to keep up. Now, and so we reverse. I am a mentor to young people and young people are a mentor to me. And so I would strongly suggest that in our classrooms, we need to flip the classroom and we need to start thinking differently how we're going to work and learn together, relearn together.
Thank you so much. I just want to, before I invite Dr. Sanjay Yadav to quickly propose a vote of thanks. Yeah,
Lata ma'am, I would be doing the vote of thanks, please.
Has he left? Okay. So before I invite Malini for this, I just want to cap this session with one small commitment that probably the country, the government of India is making, that India's non-fossil energy capacity will reach 500 GW by 2030, meeting 50% of the country's energy requirement. It will also reduce its total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons by 2030 and cut it down for economy by 45% over what was estimated in 2005 and achieve a net zero emission by 2070. I'm only mentioning this because I think somewhere in the whole idea of consumption pattern, we need to understand where we are and where we are going and what is our national ambition and how we as schools will make sure that the people that leave us into this open world and look after this will ensure that we have, we have to reduce, or we will achieve this only by reducing and absorbing emissions. So I think these are some of our statements that we like. And I'm saying this because there are many people, educators, who are looking into this today and hearing such ambitious and beautiful goals ahead. The games that we saw, Dr. Anthony Hallog, very recent, in this presentation. And I think Dr. Ravi Chopra's eco clubs and all that school students can do and should do. And of course, the social consciousness built by Dr. Janovan. Thank you very much in that sense for, I think, a very motivating and a very inspiring session where we place sustainability ahead of everything else. Thank you very much. Over to you, Malini.
Thank you, Lata ma'am. And that was a beautiful vote of thanks given by you already. So we take home a beautiful message, the message of education for humanity and education for making our children more humane. I think that's the important message that all of us are taking back. And what a wonderful session it's been. My grateful thanks on behalf of the National Progressive Schools Conference that all of you could steal some time out of your busy schedule. And some of you in such great adversity, great respect to you, Dr. Anthony Hallog. Thank you so much on behalf of the chairperson, Dr. Sudha Acharya, and her entire team. So looking forward to meeting you again and on many more occasions and to stay connected with all of you. Yeah. Thank you.
Namaste.
Keep in touch.
Namaste.
What we realized is that whatever the change be, it requires change within. We thank our panelists for this insightful session